Alright, let's describe a table called auto. And let's select star from a table called auto. Automobiles. So let's say you sell used cars and you have these cars. Now, let's say you inputted this information from a table that you got from Microsoft Excel. Now, we have Ford Explorers, we have Ford Focus, Ford Mustangs, we have Honda Civics, we have Honda CRVs, Honda Civics, Honda Passports. Now, if we go back to the database, what would happen if well, first let me order this. Select everything from auto, order by 1, column 1. Alright, so now within the order by column 1, I'm also going to order by column 2, so comma 2. So I want to order it by make, and then within the make, I want to order them by model. So as you can see here, Honda has CRV, Civics, and Passports. Now here's something interesting. Let's say we sold this Civic. Alright? And let's say I wanted to remove this Civic from the database. So that's going to be delete from auto. Well, first let me do a commit. I'll do a save point. Alright. So I'll do delete from auto where model equals Civic. Before I even hit enter, you can see the problem here. We only sold this Civic, which cost $1,800, but if I go through with this statement, all the Civics are going to disappear. So let's go ahead and hit enter. 3 rows were deleted. 3 rows were deleted. So we're going to talk about constraints, specifically the unique key. We're going to talk about a unique key, meaning we need to find a way to uniquely identify each row of a table. So let's do select star from auto. And now instead of 13 rows, we have 10 rows. No more Civics. We still have Hondas, but we have Honda CRV and a Honda Passport. But initially, we had 3 separate Civics, but we only sold the one for $1,800. All right, so let me do the same thing with Ford. Let's say we had a sale of a Ford Explorer. Well, since that's the only Explorer in this table, we can say delete from auto where model equals Explorer. 1 row deleted. If we do select star from auto, we have a Ford Focus, 3 Mustangs, but we no longer have the Explorer. All right. So one more example. Let's look at the Mustang. All right. We have 3 Mustangs remaining for 3 different prices. Let's say we sold the most expensive one for $9,900. Okay, we no longer need this row in the table. So what are we going to do? We're going to say delete from table name where model equals Mustang. The problem is all 3 of these are going to delete. Let's say you try to be creative and say, you know what? I'm not going to delete by model. I'm going to delete by price. There's only 3 Mustangs, but each has a different price. So I'm going to delete by 99. So let's try. Let's see. And there's no other, not only is there no other $9,900 Mustangs, there are no $9,900 prices at all in this table. So you think you're safe, right? So let's see. Delete from auto where price equals $9,900. 1 row deleted. Good. We got our row deleted. So we're going to do a select star and see if our Mustang for $9,900 is gone. And as you can see, we have 2 Mustangs remaining. The $9,900 is gone. So it seems like we found the way we would like to clean up, delete a table, right? Well, let's do a rollback. Rollback complete. Let's do a select star from our table and see what we get. So we get all 13 rows again because I rolled back the delete. Remember, we're not truncating. All right. Now, because you went with the price $9,900 and there were no other $9,900s, you might think that's the way to start removing rows from a table. But here's a different scenario. Here's a problem. What if you have 2 rows that have the same exact information? So we have a Honda Civic for $3,300. We also have another Honda Civic for $3,300. So if you delete by price, you're going to remove both of these rows. If you delete by make, you're going to remove all the Hondas. If you delete by model, you're going to remove all the civics. So even in the case of $9,900 Mustang, if you remove by make, you do all the Fords. If you remove by model, you remove all the Mustangs. But you said, okay, I found a Mustang that costs $9,900, and you say, I'm safe. But here, this dispels that theory, because you can have a situation where not only the make and the model are the same, but the prices are the same. So what we're going to do is we're going to start talking about unique key. A unique key uniquely identifies each row of a table. So if we go back to our example here, I input all this information into the database. So let's scroll down a little bit. And what if we had a column called item number? So this table is the same table that we're dealing with in the database. I just sorted it. I ordered it differently. But it's the same table. What if we had item number? In the sense that every time we input rows into this auto table, the automobile table, item number was 1, and then 2, and then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so forth. So that when it came time to update a row, we had a unique identifier. So even if a Civic costs $3,300 and another Honda Civic costs $3,300, we can still pinpoint the row we would like to change, update, delete, or anything, modify. We can pinpoint that row with a unique identifier. So that is the basics of the unique constraint. So now we're going to do a hands-on demonstration how to add that constraint to a table. Okay, when can you add a constraint to a table? You have two choices. You can add it when you initially create the table, or you can add the constraint to a column after you create the table. So let's look at Honda. Let's say instead of dealing with the table auto with all the different type of cars, let's say you work for Honda and Honda wants you to create a table for the item number, the model, and the price of its cars. Okay, so if we scroll down a little bit, this is what it's going to look like. Item number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Civic, Passport, and so forth. Now remember, if we did not have an item number column, if I hit delete, this is going to cause a problem in the table because we have multiple Civics, but they're different prices. But even if you look at two separate Civics, some of them have the same prices. So we need to have a way to uniquely identify each row. So we're going to create these three columns and put a unique identifier here. Remember, there's two times you can do it, and we're going to do it first when we create the table. So let's look at a table called Honda. So we're going to do create table Honda. The first column is going to be item. It's going to be a number column that'll accept, let's say, 3 digits, comma, space. And then we're going to do model, varchar 2, variable characters 2, and we'll say 20 digits. And last column will be price, and that's going to be a number, and we'll take 6 digits total with 2 decimals, close parentheses. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit comma and then enter to go to the next line. And the syntax to add a constraint is constraint, the word constraint, because there's multiple types of constraints, but the word constraint, and then the constraint name, constraint type, and then the column. So here's the syntax: constraint, constraint name, the type of constraint, and in parentheses, the column that it's pertaining to. All right, so constraint, constraint name, type, and the column. So here we're going to say constraint. We're going to call it Honda underscore unique. In fact, I'll do Honda underscore unique and then underscore item, so we know it's on the item column. This is just the name of the constraint. And then the constraint type, we're going to specify it's unique. It's a unique key. That's what it's called, unique key. And then parentheses item, because it's going to be on the item column. So here we go. Constraint, and then constraint name, I'll call it Honda underscore UQ underscore item. Then I'm going to hit space. The constraint type is going to be unique, a unique constraint. And then parentheses item, meaning I am referencing this item column. I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to say table created. Now I want you to pay attention here. We added the constraint at the end of the syntax to create the table. Again, we added the constraint at the end of the syntax to create the table. Create table name, parentheses, column 1, data type, column 2, data type, column 3, data type, comma, and instead of putting another column name, because constraint cannot be the name of a column, certain words are reserved in SQL, so SQL knows when it sees constraint, oh, okay, this is not a column, we're about to create a constraint or assign a constraint to a table. So remember, the moral of the story on this specific way to create this constraint on a table, is you can add the constraint at the end of the syntax. Now, the other way to do it, you can, when to add a constraint, when you initially create a table. Before we say after we create a table, let's go to the second way you can add a constraint when you initially create a table. So to do that, let's just drop the table we just created. Drop table Honda. Table drop. The table no longer exists. So we're going to recreate this, but we're going to make a little change to it. This is all personal preference, how you want to add the constraint to your syntax. The difference now is we're going to say create table Honda as usual. Create table Honda, parentheses, item. It's going to be a number with 3 digits. Before I hit comma and go to the next column, I'm just going to type in this information. Except the parentheses item. The reason why we don't need parentheses item is because we are already within the creation of the item column. So I'm going to literally type in this information. So I'm going to put constraint Honda underscore UQ, and I'll just call it item 2, just in case. Then I'm going to put the word unique. Then I'm going to hit comma to start the next column. Then I'm going to hit enter just so we can go to the second line. All right. So before I continue, the first way we created it, we put the constraint syntax at the end of the entire create table syntax. In the second example, we're putting the constraint creation right after the column. So we're putting the constraint in the same line as the column creation. Notice there's no comma after the data type or the word constraint. This is all one column. In other words, we're getting it out of the way. We're putting the constraint on this column right away. So I'm going to hit comma. So let's start the second column. The second column, as you can see, is model, and the third column is price. So let's say model varchar 2 comma space and then price. And it's a number data type with we'll say 6 digits with 2 decimal places, close parentheses. Then we're going to close the entire parentheses, table created. All right, these two are exactly the same table. The only difference is where in the syntax we put the creation of the constraint. In one instance, we needed a parentheses around the column because we put it at the end of the entire syntax. In the second instance, we didn't need to put parentheses after the unique to reference what column we wanted the unique key to be applied to because we put it right after the column creation. All right, so this is column 1, this is column 2, and this is column 3. So if I describe Honda, there it is. Item, model, and price. Okay, let's describe Honda. And now we're going to see how to add a constraint to a table after you create the table. So we did the 2 methods when you create the table. Now we're going to add the unique key constraint, the unique key after. All right. Let's say you created this table Honda and you didn't enter any data in yet, but you said, oh, I forgot to put the constraint. I already created the table. Let me add the constraint after the table was created, or even after a couple of rows were inserted. There are certain circumstances where you can still add a constraint after it was created. So the syntax is alter table name, add constraint, and whatever the constraint name, the type of constraint, in this case unique, and the column name it's pertaining to. So it's going to be alter. So we describe Honda. There's table Honda. Describe Honda. select star from Honda. Nothing's in Honda. So let's clear the screen. We're going to describe Honda. Alter table Honda. Add. Put the word constraint. We're adding a constraint. Add constraint and the constraint name. So I'll call the constraint name item underscore UQ for item, for the unique item. You can name it anything you want. Alter table name. Add constraint name. The type is going to be a unique key. And then parentheses, the column we want it to apply to. Table altered. Table altered. All right? So that's how you add, that's the syntax to add a constraint to it, to an already existing table. So again, let's review. The purpose of constraints, it prevents invalid data to be entered into the table. So if we look at our information here, if I have item number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm uniquely identifying each row based on item number. If I do not have a unique key constraint on item number and I accidentally put the word 1 for Civic for 3300 and also 1 for Civic for 3300, how can I differentiate these rows? The answer is you can't. It's good practice to always have at least one way to uniquely identify each row. If you have a table like select star from EMP, you have an employees table, and you have a person named Smith, and you have another person named Smith, another person named Smith, and they just happen to have the same manager, and they just happen to have the same hire date. And let's just say since they were hired on the same date, they had the same salary, they were in the same department. How can we tell the difference between these people? Employee number. The employee number is the unique identifier. So there's a unique key constraint. Remember, constraint on the employee number column. Because if you look, the purpose of constraints, it constrains bad data, invalid data to be entered into the table. So when you add a constraint to a column of a table, you have two choices. You can do it when you initially create the table and add it to the column, or after you create the table, you can create the constraint and add it to the column after you create the table with this syntax. Alter table name, add constraint name, the type of constraint, and whatever column it's going to apply to. Alright, so let's input data into Honda. Now Honda has a unique key constraint on item because we don't want two rows to have the same item number. So let's go ahead and input some data. We're going to input item number 1, Civic for 3300. Item 1, Civic 3300. Insert into Honda. We'll do values. We're going to do item number 1, comma, a Civic, and the price 3300. Close parentheses, enter. One row created. Select star from Honda. There it is. Now what if we want to enter the same price type car, the same model, but let's say instead of item number 2 we accidentally put item number 1, which is going to violate what we're trying to do here. So let's see how SQL treats that. So we're going to say insert into Honda values 1, comma, and let's even call it something else. Let's call it an Accord. Instead of a Honda Civic, Accord, comma, and instead of $3,300, let's say it was $3,400. Pay attention to what happens here. After I hit enter, it says error. It gives us the error code, unique constraint violated, and in parentheses it tells us the name of the constraint. The user is Scott dot, and I named the constraint item underscore unique. You see how this protects us? So I changed this to Accord and I changed this to 3400. But let's go back to what we were doing. Let's say 2 and Civic. So let's say we got ourselves together. We realized our mistake. So let's hit the up arrow, and let's say instead we put 2 and we put Civic and 3300. enter, one row created. So now let's select star from Honda. And we have two cars that are exactly the same price, but notice now we have a unique identifier. We have a way to differentiate these. All right, and let's say we go to car number 3. It's going to be a Honda Passport for $5,500. So we're going to do insert into Honda values. It's going to be item number 3, a Passport, and for $5,500. One row created. Now let's go to item number 4, and instead of a CRV for $7,400, I see it says number 4, but what if I accidentally put the number 3? It's going to be the same thing. Insert into Honda values. I accidentally put item number 3, CRV for $7,400. Again, violated. So this is how a constraint protects you from accidentally inputting the wrong information, which is what we said earlier. Purpose of constraints prevents invalid data to enter into a table. Alright, so if we do select star from Honda, and we have Honda's database, the item number, the model, and the price. Alright, now let's order this by column 2. I want to see everything ordered by the model number, so I'll just say by model. Alright, so we have 2 Accords, 2 Civics, 2 CRVs, and 2 Passports. Now, here is where having a unique key, a unique identifier for each row benefits us. Let's say we sell Honda Civic for $3,300. Now let's say we don't know which one it is until we look at the item number and someone tells you, hey, listen, item number 2, we sold it. So you can delete it from the database. So now we can say delete from Honda where, not where model equals Civic, because that's going to delete all the Civics. We're going to say where item equals, and I believe I said 1. So let's say we sold out of 1. Alright, so I'm going to hit enter. One row deleted. So now if I do select star from Honda, we're still going to see a Civic for $3,300, but now it's uniquely identified as item number 2. Up here we had item number 1 and 2. Alright? Alright? So let's say we have 2 separate Accords. We have an Accord that sells for $1,800 and an Accord that sells for $7,400. If we say, hey, I would like to delete out Accord that sold for $7,400. You don't want to say delete from table where price equals $7,400, because guess what? We have a CRV that's also priced for $7,400. So if you delete based off the price $7,400, you're accidentally deleting another table, another row. And imagine if this table had thousands of rows. Who knows how much damage you can do? So if we want to delete out specifically this Honda Accord for $7,400, we're not going to base the syntax on Accord, because we're going to delete this Accord for $1,800, and we're definitely not going to base the syntax off of the price of $7,400, because we're also going to delete out anything else that's $7,400. But the unique identifier is 7. Delete from Honda where item equals 7 semicolon enter. One row deleted. Select star from Honda. We still have an Accord for $1,800, but notice item 7 Accord $7,400 no longer there. So that pretty much wraps up the concept of a unique key constraint. Again, the unique key constraint can be added to a table while the table is being created. It can be added to a table after a table was already created. And the purpose of a unique key constraint is to uniquely identify each row of a table.